Hello, my name is Bren,
My name's Jem.
and this is the Trunk2Tale Podcast. And Jem, you've invited along another special guest today.
Yeah. And we're all going to get confused because our names are so close together. But it's a great pleasure to welcome Jen Coates along, and Jen is the wife of Rich, who was on a couple of weeks ago, and is as I understand it, is the power behind Marshalling CTE. So I certainly, in our brief knowing of Jen, which has been great, can see her as a force of nature. So it's always great to have a force of nature on the channel, and we're looking forward to finding out more about you, Jen. But just as a sort of introduction, is what was your life like? What were you doing before Marshalling CTE ever happened? What was your career, and what's your origin story?
My origin story. So, most of my life I've been involved with retail management. And during COVID, I fell out of love with that because I was working at Tesco's and we saw the worst of humanity during COVID in supermarkets. Without going into too much detail, but people panic buying, refusing to wear masks and social distancing. It was hell, absolute hell. And then I went into care. I worked with people in their own homes, so I saw a variety of people, mainly elderly, people with dementia, which was a really rewarding job and I really enjoyed it. But I've got a bit of a dodgy back, so it wasn't the best career choice for me with a bad back. So that's a general thing of my life working, apart from I was involved a lot with the local rugby club. That's actually how I met Rich. I worked behind the bar when my kids were young at the local rugby club, and I was also the first aider. That was interesting. Rugby men are a different breed completely when it comes to drinking and injuries.
I can imagine.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on the
Yes,
thing.
that's how I met Rich.
Yes, that's how I met Rich. Yeah, Jen, why did you go into caring for people? So was it something you'd always thought about, or it just, you'd opened the newspaper, there was a job there? I mean, what stimulated that move?
So I did take a break from working for a while. About 14 years ago, Rich had a massive rugby injury that put him in a wheelchair. He ended up with paralyzed right arm and he couldn't weight bear at all. So for about 2 years, I was his full-time carer and he needed a lot of care. It was really bad. And also my granddad had Alzheimer's and vascular dementia. So my mum was his full-time carer, but I helped where I could with that as well. So I already knew what caring was about, and it was something that I found really rewarding and wanted to do. So that's how I went from retail to caring.
Can I ask Jen?
I was already doing it
Sorry,
unpaid, so I thought I might do it as a paid job.
Did you go to the to work in caring during the pandemic or after?
After.
Right. Okay. Right.
Right. So, what point did you start to think there was something happening with Rich, which was not, I don't know what the word normal. There's something not quite right here. How did that emerge? And did it?
Probably the right word. Right word.
Yeah. And Was it something
I mean,
you?
at first,
What's the word? Sorry, go on. No, go on, Jen.
so it was after the big rugby injury, he was left very depressed. We just put that down to the big rugby injury. So then the doctors were, oh, he's just got depression, so pump him full of antidepressants, and he just buried himself in work. And then on weekends, he would go completely off the rails. He would drink heavily. He was gambling. That caused a lot of problems in our relationship. Looking back, he was self-medicating, which is really common in CTE. They use alcohol or drugs or other things like gambling to try and deal with their own mental health problems. We realised there was a serious problem. It was just before the very first lockdown, he tried to take his own life. Been out on a 15-hour bender, I think it was. We'd had a bit of a row because he was spending money that we couldn't afford him to spend. I went to bed, didn't think anything of it until I got a phone call from one of his friends really worried about him because he basically sent texts out to everybody, and I managed to find out where he was without police, and he was basically brought me safely. That's when we knew there was a serious problem. Lockdown probably saved his life because he's never been a home drinker. Luckily, he's always been need to go to the pub, never been one to drink at home. So lockdown took away the option of pubs because everything closed down, so he couldn't go out drinking. Then his memory started to show problems. I just thought he wasn't listening to me. The amount of times I've said to him, "Told you this already." "No, you haven't." "Yes, I have." And there was lots of little warning signs, but we never dreamed that it would be something like CTE or dementia. He had all the tests done, and that came back with probable CTE and early onset dementia. And it sounds awful, but at the time when we got the diagnosis, it was like, oh my God, now we know what's wrong with him. It all makes sense. But now what? I mean, he's 41, he's got dementia. I had to take his driving license away from him because he was getting lost. He got lost coming home from Cheltenham, which is a straight road. I was on the phone to him, having to describe to him how to get home. Even though the sat-nav was on the screen for him, he didn't believe it. He was just like, "No, I'm lost." So I had to stay on the phone with him the whole time for him to get home, and that's when we realised it was a serious problem. And he was a driver as a job, so we had quite a successful self-employed career. Had to close his business down. It was some big changes that needed to happen. Yeah, it's been tough.
And you were working, Jen, at that time when Rich was diagnosed with early onset?
No, I wasn't working. I've got my own mental health problems. I've got PTSD from an
Right.
abusive ex-partner. That's why I understand mental health so well. So I actually wasn't working at the time. I was stay at home. I helped him where I could with his business side. I would do the paperwork sort of thing, but I wasn't officially working, no.
Right.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is I'm absolutely in awe that somehow you're still here. I mean, I think of the amount of pressure your relationship has been put under. I don't think I could have survived that degree of stress. So, first of all, I sort of bow down to both of you for actually managing to stay in the game because it just sounds so horrendous. So, that would be my first comment. Well done for being here and talking to us at all. But yeah, it's I say it's a fascinating thing, and of course, everybody carries their own baggage into a relationship, don't they? So you came in with some stuff already. Um, just to say, you ask about your family. Are the children of yours and Richie's children from the previous marriage? So just to try to understand your family structure.
Yes, so I've got 3 kids from my previous marriage. Um, they're adults
Right.
now, so the eldest is 25 and the youngest is 22. I had 3 kids very close together. So they no longer live at home, which is probably a blessing with what's going on. Um, and then we've got 3 grandchildren, and a 4th on the way. So yeah, that's our family. So
Congratulations.
the kids are all grown up and moved away now.
Right. Right.
And
And
if
then
you can,
sorry,
sorry,
go on.
Brent, go on.
Yeah. Oh, and after Rich was diagnosed, Jen, what I mean, how you understood all of a sudden what had been going on? It made sense, but how did you then react? Can you recall how you responded?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, for the first couple of days, it was like a light bulb moment and almost a relief knowing what is actually wrong with him. That because he felt like he was going mad. And then it was the reality hit me that, oh my God, my husband's 41, he's got dementia. Now what do we do? Um, I'm somebody that when I'm faced with something, I will go down the rabbit hole of researching. It, if I can research it, I will, and I just want as much information as possible to understand how I can help. And that's what I did. I basically spent all of my time on the laptop researching what support is out there, what treatments are available, what the science is saying, and everything I was reading was out in the US. This country is like 20 years behind the US because of the NFL scandal. Um, and then it was like, right, so what support is there? The only support I could find was support groups out in America, and Dementia UK. I reached out to the Admiral nurses. And now we've got an Admiral nurse, Joe. He's absolutely amazing. He's worth his weight in gold. He has guided me so much. And then it was because he was diagnosed privately, not through the NHS. We then had to start the ball rolling with the NHS, get him into referrals and stuff, which has been an absolute headache.
Just to ask a
Right.
question about that, Jen, because I'm talking to somebody else about our.
Yeah.
I've been invited to go on another podcast to talk about all this stuff, and they said, "Can you be diagnosed with CTE while you're still alive?" I said, "Well, I thought it was a sort of post-mortem thing, but what does the diagnosis mean for an alive person? If you get the question."
Yes, so CTE cannot be diagnosed whilst you're still alive. So it has to be a probable CTE diagnosis. So the way they've come up with a probable CTE diagnosis is, so you can have scans done. It's called a DWI MRI, which is available through the NHS, but they don't give them out very often. That measures basically the water molecules in your brain tracks, and they can tell from that by comparing, say, Rich's brain scan against somebody else that's the same sort of age that's never done contact sports, how it should look. Richie's came up with 23 tracks out of, I think it's 68 tracks that are damaged. So they look at that, then they look at your sporting history, or concussive history, whether that be from veterans, domestic violence, or sports, or any other cause. They also look at, they're looking for cognitive and behavioural changes. There has to be a history of behavioural changes. So the first thing that usually happens in CTE is, because it's the frontal lobe that's 99% of the time damaged first. The first thing that will happen is depression symptoms and behavioural changes. So they'll have impulsivity, hence why they usually end up self-medicating and being addicted to drugs, alcohol, or gambling. Their personality will change. Rich's personality has changed massively. He's not the same man that I met 16 years ago. He's a completely different man now, and this is something that is really common. You would have heard in the NFL a lot where people have become violent. So another common symptom in the early stages is they get rage, and it comes from nowhere, without any warning. So me and Rich call it Hulk mode. He can literally be sat there watching telly, nothing at all to trigger him, and suddenly the anger just washes over him, and he just feels like he wants to kill somebody. It's horrendous. Or it can be something like, we'll be driving in the car, and even though he's the passenger, he's still getting road rage. Somebody will cut me up, and he wants to get out of the car and he wants to kill him. So these are the things that they're looking for. And then the other criteria is there'll be no other possible cause for this behavioural change, brain damage, and cognitive decline. If there's no other cause and the patterns are there, then they come up with the diagnosis of probable CTE. And it's something that's really frustrating, because people don't realise Alzheimer's cannot be diagnosed fully until somebody's dead. And
Oh,
it's
I didn't know
frustrating
that.
that you don't hear probable
Oh.
Alzheimer's. Yeah. There's a couple of dementias that can only be diagnosed on the post-mortem. So you don't hear people saying probable Alzheimer's, but we have to use the word probable CTE. And it's really frustrating, because as soon as you use that word probable, people go, yeah, but it might not be that.
Yeah, it's a marketing problem, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Terrible.
if you put in hashtag CTE on YouTube, there are very few actual videos. Whereas if you put in hashtag dementia or Alzheimer's or anything else, there's huge numbers. So that brings me back then to NFL. It seems as though you've taken quite a lot of encouragement from the work that's been done in America.
Yeah, in America, I mean, they've still got a battle out there. There are still, without getting into the politics of governing bodies of sports, because that's a whole nother ball game and a subject that I could spend hours talking about. They are miles ahead of us out there. It's accepted out there majority that there is a problem with contact sports and CTE. And there are treatments out there, like neurofeedback, which is far too complicated for me to understand and explain, but it basically helps to rewire your brain and make parts of your brain that aren't firing properly fire again. This is something that you can get done over here, but it's not available on the NHS. That all the treatments that seem to help, like red light therapy and neurofeedback, are widely used in America, but we just can't get over here because it's all done privately, and unless you've got lots of money, you can't access those treatments, which is really frustrating.
And then at some point you decided to set up your own support group.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the idea. The idea was Rich and Roy. So we were on a lot of support groups on Facebook, just basically trying to get as much information as we could. And one of them, there was somebody from the UK, a footballer, who had posted on there an interview that he had done. And of course, all the British members in that group all then started talking on that. And then Rich and Roy turned around and went, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had a UK-based group? And then Rich spoke to me about it, and I went, well, that's easy enough to do. I'll just go on Facebook, set up a group, and off we go. So yeah, I did that within a couple of days. That was pretty easy to do. But then that very small idea snowballed into, right, well, it's not just the people with horrible CTE that need support, it's the whole family. So then we set up a support group for family members. And then Rich and Roy spoke almost daily on the phone, which was quite funny because you'd hear them talking for hours and then they would both start giggling because they'd both forgotten what they're talking about. And then I have to step in and remind them what they're talking about. We have to laugh about it, otherwise we'll all go bonkers, won't we? And then they decided, right, there's all this treatment in America. Why can't we get it over here? And we realized it's because it's all private. And it's like, wouldn't it be great if we had a charity that could raise money to help guys access this treatment? So that's how it all came up with the idea. And both Rich and Roy were like, coming up with all these ideas, but they both very quickly realized they didn't have the mental capacity to deal with it anymore. So I stepped in basically and took over the reins. Rich and Roy come up with ideas that get thrown at me and I run with it basically, and very quickly managed to find another director, Andrew Watkins, who is very, very vocal on Twitter. He has been campaigning for, I think it's 9 years now. So his best friend took his own life, probably from CTE. So he's been campaigning for like 9 years on Twitter. Relentless he is, the knowledge this man has because of all the research he does and all the contacts he's got. He came on board to help us. So yeah, we've got a small team, and it's grown from this tiny little idea of let's run a support group to we've got WhatsApp groups, we've got the website, we're trying to raise money now so that, I mean, the dream is to be able to raise enough money so that we can fund treatment for the guys that can't afford to pay for it themselves. My other dream is to get a psychologist on board with us so that the guys that are in real crisis can access that, because the NHS doesn't know how to help. To put it, so some of the guys that are really suicidal and really struggling, Rich has been one of those. He's gone to the crisis team. The crisis team have gone, it's a neurological problem, we can't help. Even though they're suicidal, we can't help. It's a neurological problem. But then the waiting list for neurology is like at least a year. So these guys are just being let down completely by the NHS, and obviously a peer support group doesn't have the experience to deal with people that are in proper crisis. So that would be my dream, that we can get somebody to help the guys that are in crisis, do what we can. But it is shocking. I think within the past year, we've lost 32 people in this country that we know of to suicide from CTE.
Well, that fits pretty well with what would be our agenda from the on the Trunk2Tale side. It's interesting. In the last week or so, I was talking to a guy who's just retired from the police, and he didn't have any idea that one of the reasons that that suicide is high in police is from head trauma. It isn't being talked about at all. They're talking about sort of more your PTSD type things, psychological
Yep.
trauma, not neurological trauma. And I said to him, so just coming back to what you were saying, when he was recounting the behaviours of the people who were committing suicide, marital infidelity came up a lot. And you were talking about impulse control. And I wondered whether there's not if that's the pattern, obviously infidelity is an impulse control thing. And if that's their route, while they're in the police, you see, what they can control the narrative around whatever it is they're doing. As soon as they leave, they're not in control anymore. They get discovered because they can't stop it from being discovered. And now they're put under the spotlight for these things that are happening to them. So it's sort of this, but they're not talking about CTE. That's why I'm telling you, they talk about other things. And in a separate conversation, somebody says to me, well, young men are killing themselves. It's one of the biggest causes of death up to the age of 40 is suicide. And I said, yeah, but it could be that the reason is that young men play hard, get hurt, and CTE could be the explanation for a lot of the suicide in young men up to a certain age. It could be, because you showed me that research from the woman in the States that reckoned 1% of the population or so have probably got concussion type, whatever. What if it's at 1%? That would explain quite a lot about the prevalence of suicide. And if it's young men are playing harder, they're going to be more likely to get this than young women. Until, of course, now young women rugby players and football players are coming through, we might start to see the same thing, mightn't we? But anyway, I talk too much, so.
Jen, yeah, so I'll just interrupt. Jen, I want to give you the last word.
Sorry, Jen. That's terrible.
No, what are your sort of, if you like, 2 or 3 fundamental hopes going forward with Marshalling CTE?
So our hope is to help as many people as we can that are really struggling, and also their families, because there isn't much support out there. We haven't got a magic wand. We can't cure dementia. We can't cure CTE, but our motto is we're stronger together, and we firmly believe that, and we find that a lot, that the guys that are in the support group, they lean on each other, and they also help each other understand their symptoms. So they'll share a symptom that they think is just them, and they'll go, "Oh my God, no, me as well." So that's one of the hopes. The other hope is to raise awareness. We don't want to ban sports. Rich would go and play rugby tomorrow if he could. I personally can't watch it anymore, but we don't want to ban these sports. We just want to make them safer, and we want people to be aware of the dangers. I mean, people still box. Everybody's known for years and years that boxing will more likely cause you brain damage, but you know that it's going to do that. You know the risks, and if people want to play rugby, they should be told the risks, and then that's up to them to make informed decisions, knowing what the risk is. And also there needs to be support for if the worst does happen when they get concussions. They need the proper support. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers that if you are amateur grassroots level, the guidelines from Rugby World is that you should be sat out for 28 days. But if you're elite, it's 6 or 7 days. I mean, how is that okay? How can the brain know that because you're an elite player, your brain is meant to recover quicker? It's just absolutely bonkers. And then the other thing is to raise money so we can help as many people as we can, to help their symptoms. So the main symptom seems to be headaches. So an example of how bad the headaches get: Rich 2 weeks ago was curled up in the fetal position, crying his eyes out because the pain in his head was that bad. He is literally led there clutching his head like this, crying, going, I can't take it anymore. I just need to die. The pain is too much. I can't deal with it anymore. And every time he tried to move, he was crying because the pain was too bad. He had sunglasses on, his eyes shut, all the blackout blinds closed, and the light that was hardly there was still too much for him. These guys need support to be able to deal with these symptoms, and they need treatment to try and make the symptoms more manageable, because it's usually the symptoms that are causing them to commit suicide. It's the headaches like that where they just can't take it anymore. That's what's causing such a high suicide rate. So that's what our ultimate aims are.
Yeah. We can hear your pain there, Jen, and
Yeah.
Rich's. It's inspirational work that you're doing.
It was horrendous.
Yeah. We're here to try and help the way that we know how to help. So hopefully, Trunk2Tale and Marshalling CTE will have a long future together, and that raising money thing is going to be part of what we'd like to try to do. But you can help us on that side as well. So we're looking forward to a long relationship with you guys. So thank you very much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah,
It's lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Jen. It's been a pleasure, and
Thank
hopefully lots
you.
of people will be listening. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Hopefully. Guys.